Hi guys. In today's video, we are going to do chapter 22, economic growth and the business cycle. So the lecture outcomes is that once you have studied this chapter, you should be able to define economic growth, discuss how economic growth is measured, identify sources of economic growth, discuss the cause of low economic growth, discuss the cause of low economic growth, define business cycle and its four elements, discuss the cause of business cycles and measure business cycles. Right, let's get into it. So, what is economic growth? So you remember from the previous chapter, chapter 13, we said that economic growth is basically an increase in the production capacity of a country over a period of time, right? Or an increase in total income. Obvious, guys, if there's an increase in the production of a country, it would definitely increase what the total income, meaning the aggregate income in the economy, right? And I did explain to say that an increase in the production of a country, it stimulates a lot of other economic activities, right? Which I said that an increase in the production capacity of the country, obviously, if there's an increase in the production, it means that um, the goods that have been produced are more than enough to satisfy the domestic demand, meaning that to satisfy the South African citizen, and also there would be some goods that would be left, right? Because like the production was more than enough. So for those goods which are left, they will then be able to do what? To export them, meaning that to sell them in the rest of the world through what? Through exports, right? Export them to other countries. We can sell them at a lower price, which is called dumping, obviously because we're trying to get rid of the excess, right? And then when we sell those goods, obviously, to other countries, it increases our exports, which then increase which then increases the foreign currency that we have at hand. Because remember, when we're exporting, we sell these goods to other people and maybe in SA, and then they pay us money, right? They give us money, which is an injection in the economy. So an increase in the production, it also increases the injection in the economy because some goods will be exported, which will then lead to an injection in the economy. But also, when is coming in, it then increases the revenue of the government because now when money comes into our economy, for the producers there who are producing these goods and services, they can increase their production further. They can employ more factors of production, including laborers, right? Including the workers, right? So which then reduces what? The unemployment rate, which then increases the income that people have. Obviously, when you're employed, you have more income, then your consumption expenditure also starts to increase. So you start to demand more goods and services. Then obviously, you're going to be charged VAT on those products that you pay there. Then money goes to the government. So the government revenue also increases. And then the government is also able to provide us with the public goods and services and also provide us with proper infrastructure such as roads and can provide us with the schools, hospitals. And after that, foreign direct investment also comes in. So the people outside, they see that no, South Africa is doing well. South Africa has infrastructure. Let's invest in South Africa. So we also get foreign direct investment and the economic activities that just keep on like being stimulated, which then leads also to what to economic sorry to an improvement in our standard of living. Obviously, because now we have proper infrastructure, we have income, we're employed, it then changes our standard of living, right? It improves our standard of living. So economic growth is very important, is very an increase in the production basically is very important in order to to have economic growth in the economy, right? And it also helps to reduce the unemployment rate and also alleviates poverty because if there's an increase in the production, as I mentioned, government can also supply um government can also increase government expenditure, meaning that for the people that are living in disadvantaged communities, the government can go to those communities and provide them with proper infrastructure, such as roads, provide them with schools and also RDP houses, right? So economic growth is very important in the economy, which is just obviously economic growth is just an increase in the production, right? So an increase in the production capacity of the country is very important in the economy because it helps to stabilize the economy, but also it alleviates poverty and also reduces unemployment rates and also stimulates these other economic activities that I've already mentioned, Ukuthi, would have foreign direct investment, government expenditure, and so on, right? So economic growth essentially is just an increase in the production capacity of a country over a period of time, right? Which obviously increases also total income, right? Aggregate income. So economic growth, as you get it, is just an increase in the production capacity. And we measure economic growth using real GDP, right? You remember we have nominal GDP and we also have what? Real GDP. And we said with the real GDP, we use what? We use the constant prices, right? The prices of the base year. Remember, it's real. So we use what? The constant prices and which are prices of the base year. With the nominal GDP, we said that nominal GDP, it is where now we calculate GDP using what? Using the current prices or the market prices, right? The prices of that year, right? And we also said that real GDP is a good measure to see how the economy is or the actual state of the economy in terms of production because it eliminates the effect of inflation, right? With the real GDP, we take the prices as they were in that base year and we calculate GDP and compare how the economy has changed, right? So it gives the actual growth rate of the economy without the effect of price changes. While with the nominal GDP, because we take into account inflation with the nominal GDP, remember we use the prices of that particular year, the market prices or the current prices. Obviously they have inflation because the prices have been increasing. So with the nominal GDP, it doesn't give us the actual state of the economy to say, okay, how is the economy doing in terms of production? Right? It doesn't give the actual state of the economy with nominal GDP because it includes what these prices which have inflation in them. So if you were to view to measure how the economy is doing using nominal GDP, it will not give you the actual state of the economy because you probably get something maybe like I don't want to confuse you guys, but let me try to make this example. So maybe you calculate the nominal GDP, maybe you get something like 8.5, right? And then 8.5 will tell you, it's okay, the growth rate of my economy is improving, maybe compared to last year, which was maybe 5.5. You say, oh no, the growth rate of the economy is actually improving, which means that um and then you conclude to say there has been an increase in the production capacity in the economy, right, with nominal GDP. But now, if you calculate using real GDP, you find maybe you are getting a figure which is maybe 0.5. So you can see that with nominal GDP, you got 8.5. With real GDP, you're getting 0.5. They're not the same. Obviously, 8.5 is more than 0.5 because with the nominal GDP, it takes into account what? Inflation. With real GDP, it gives us the actual state of the economy to say, this is where we are, right? It provides an accurate picture of the actual growth of the economy, right? Real GDP. So I hope you guys got that example. I hope it didn't confuse anyone. But real GDP, what you just have to know is that with real GDP, we use the constant prices and we use the prices of the base year. And it's actually a good measure of the state of the economy because it doesn't take into account inflation. And then with the nominal GDP, it does take into account inflation and we use the market price or the current prices. Right. So economic growth, which is just an increase in the production capacity of the country in a specific period of time, it is measured using real GDP. And we also measure it using per capita figures, right? Per capita, basically, when you calculate real GDP per capita, you just say real GDP for the year divided by the population times 100, right? This one, it just shows it GDP per capita is used to show ukuthi, um how has the standard of living of the population improved, right? Okay, we see ukuthi, okay, there's been what an improvement in the production, an increase in the production, which is essentially economic growth. So now, how has that affected the the population, right? And then we then have to measure using what per capita figures, where we say real GDP divided the population times 100 to tell us more about what's the standard of living of the population, right? Hope you guys are getting that. Remember, I said that an increase in the economic growth is an increase in the production, right? Obviously, when we experience economic growth, it will lead to an increase in these economic activities which I mentioned. Ukuthi, unemployment rate decreases, income increase, government expenditure increase. Essentially, at the end, it's going to also improve the standard of living of the population, right? And I mentioned to say that government will provide maybe like the poor communities with the RDP houses and all of that, which then improve their standard of living, right? So now with the capital, we are trying to see what, okay, how has then the standard of living of the population improved by dividing real GDP by the population multiplied by 100, right? And so here, so this is basically just a figure which is showing what the real GDP was 0.3 in 2019, and then you can see that in 2020 it was negative, meaning that we had a negative growth rate. So here our the economic activities were declining and all of that. Obviously because in 2020 we had COVID-19, right? You can remember that during COVID-19, people were unemployed. Those that were employed, some of them were retrenched from work. Obviously, that increased the unemployment rate. And obviously, people, when they are unemployed, consumption expenditure starts to decrease because you don't have income and all of that, right? So that is why we have a negative growth rate here. Also means that the production, in terms of economic growth, the economy was declining as well, right? So we had a negative growth rate in 2021, then it started to increase in 2021 and 2 and so on. Same thing, explaining the same thing. So we have the sources of growth, right? Sources of growth, these are things which then lead to an improvement in the economic growth, which is just an increase in the production capacity of the country, right? So we have demand factors and supply factors, which then lead to economic growth. So the demand factors, you have domestic demand. So with the demand factors, guys, for production to increase, remember, economic growth is essentially just an increase in the production capacity, right? So with the demand factors, for production to increase, there has to be a demand, right? People have to demand things, and then the producers can then produce those things which are demanded, right? So the demand factors, they are very important for what? For economic growth, for an economy basically sorry, for production to increase, demand is very important. So we look at the domestic demand, which is basically the demand within the economy, right? Domestic, it basically means ukuthi we're only focusing on the demand that is happening in South Africa, right? What are people demanding in South Africa? We're just looking at South Africa only. You can see that here we use the element of total spending, which is C plus G plus X. So the element of total spending is basically C plus I plus G plus X minus M. But here they excluded I and Z. Why? Because with the I, it's investment. It's investment occurs between South Africans and the rest of the world. And then with the imports, it is when we South Africans, we're buying things from the rest of the world. So we're not demanding, it's not domestic demand, but it's the demand of foreign foreign goods, foreign products. So we exclude that here because we are focusing only on the domestic demand, right? So we want to see what's okay. We want to see what's okay. What is being demanded in South Africa, right? So in order to increase the production, which essentially is economic growth, we focus on the we focus on the domestic demand to say, okay, how is the demand within our economy, right? Within the borders of the country. Right. So demand factors, we're just looking at that. Consumption expenditure, C for consumption expenditure by household, G government expenditure, then exports. Exports, it's basically now where people from the rest of the world, they're demanding things that are here in South Africa, obviously. So this one will also lead to economic growth because for exports to happen, for us to export these products, we have to produce them within SA, right? And then export them to the rest of the world, right? So domestic demand also is one of the demand factors which lead to economic growth. And then import substitution is basically now where the government will say, or provide incentive to producers to say, please let us produce the items that people are buying from outside, right? Let us produce these items that were previously imported so that you guys do not have to like buy items from Shein and Temu. We will try to produce those items here in South Africa, right? That also increases the production capacity of a country, which will then lead to what? To economic growth, right? So import substitution is basically trying to manufacture the items that were previously imported domestically, right? Also, import substitution, it also improves the balance of payment. You'll remember when we are doing the chapter 13, we said that we also have the balance of payment, which consists of like two accounts. We said we have a financial account, and also record current account or trading accounts. So we said that in the current account, that is where we look at the exports and the imports, right? We record the sales and the purchases. So when we're selling to the rest of the world and when they are buying from us, right? Exports and imports. And we said that if we have a balance of payment deficit, where now it means that we are importing more than we're actually exporting, right? And I said that the imports, let me just write this down here. I said what we have your export year. How can I change this? I said what you, it's where you have your exports X being less than your import, right? So if we have this, then we have a deficit. So if the balance we have, if in our balance of payment we have a deficit, meaning that your exports is like an income, right? Because when you are selling to the rest of the world, you get money, and then your imports, I said it's like an expense because when you are buying from the rest of the world, it's a leakage for us. Money is leaving the economy. So if now we have our exports, which is an expense, being greater than our imports, which is income, it means that we have a balance of payment deficit, right? So import substitution, it also improves this deficit because what essentially happens is that we will try to produce these goods that you guys have been importing domestically so that to try and discourage imports of these goods. So now if we produce these goods domestically, that will do what? That will reduce the imports, which is an expense, right? Which then improves what's the balance of payment deficits. So import substitution is also good for economic growth because now if we're trying to discourage imports by producing these items which are previously imported, by producing them domestically within South Africa, it then increases the production capacity of the country, right? Which is economic growth. And then number 3, the demand factors is exports. Exports, you know that exports is basically now where we're selling to the rest of the world, and then they give us income. So in order to stimulate growth as well, we also have to focus more on exports, meaning that we have to produce more goods which are being exported, right? If you see which there is something that we are good with in South Africa that the rest of the world does not have, let us produce more of that item so that we can export it, right? the more we're producing more of that item, essentially that is economic growth because it increases our production capacity, right? And then now when we're exporting them, it's even better, it's even good for us because now it's going to increase the injections in the economy because if you're exporting goods, you get income, right? You get money, people they pay. So it increases what's the injection in the economy, which then also improves the balance of payment, right? Remember, if we have a balance of payment deficit again, I did say, Guti, it's like you have your export share being less than your imports, right? So to improve the balance of payment, we can try to increase the goods which are being exported so that we can get more income, right? So let's focus on the goods that we are exporting. Let's try to produce more of them so that we can export more so that we can get more income to increase the injections in the economy, right? So they're saying here much of SA's economic growth is based on exports of minerals. So we all know this. So we export minerals in South Africa. We're one of the, I don't know, but like exporters of minerals. Like we are very good with mineral resources and also gold. You guys know that. So let us try to export these minerals. Let's before even exporting them, let's try to add value on them so that maybe we can export them at a higher price, right? But like exports, essentially how export in leads to to economic growth when we focus mostly on the items that have to be exported. Like we increase the production of the goods that have to be exported, that will increase the production in the economy, which is economic growth. So the demand factors, we look at domestic demand, which basically speaks of we are focusing only on the demand within South Africa, right? The demand within South Africa. And then will import substitution is now saying, okay, let us try to manufacture these products that people are importing from other countries so that money does not leave the economy, right? Let's produce these items that people are buying from these other countries domestically, right? That also increases the production of the country. Export as well is saying, okay, let's focus on producing more of the items that we're going to export. South Africa is very good with what? Minerals. Let us make sure now that we focus on producing these items and refining them and adding value on them so that now when we actually export them, we can get more money, right? We can make like yeah, just that. I hope you guys are getting this one. And then we also look at supply factors. So with the supply factors, they all relate to the factors of production, right? They all relate to the factors of production, whereby you have your natural resources, you have labor, you have capital, and entrepreneurship. So natural resources for land. Remember, our factors of production, it's land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So, so yeah, with the natural resources, so for the supply factors, these are the factors that also do what also stimulate the production, right? Which essentially is what is lead to economic growth. Obviously, because an increase in the production capacity of the country. Um, okay, that is a definition of what of economic growth. So with the natural resources, they're saying that these includes minerals, such as diamond and etc. So new techniques must be developed to discover minerals through exploitation. These resources must be utilized sustainably. So basically here they're saying that with the natural resources that we have, we should use them effectively in our to increase the production of goods and services. So South Africa is very good with natural resources such as they've named them here. So let us utilize the resources that we have effectively and efficiently to do what? To increase our production, right? We also have labor. They're saying that the labor is also very important driver of economic growth. Quality is more important. So one of the problems that we have in South Africa is that we do have labor, we do have people that are willing to work, but then the quality is a problem. we don't have quality labor, meaning that we don't have skilled people. People, it's either they are semi-skilled or they are unskilled, right? We need people that have we need quality labor basically. Obviously, guys, labor is used within the production process, right? The people are used in the production process to produce these goods and services. So there within the production process, we need people with skills, right? To use the machines. We need people with um also people that just like can come up with ideas to say let's increase our production by doing this. Just we need those type of laborers, quality labor. And also to have quality labor, we have to improve our education system. So they're saying that quality is influenced by education, training, nutrition, and health, right? So, so for you to be for a labor for the quality of labor to improve, we need people that are educated, training. You need to offer training to the workers, laborers, and nutrition as well. People have to be healthy. Obviously, if you're not healthy, if you're not well, if you're sick, probably you end up missing work, you're not coming to work, and then the production decreases, right? The production decreases, which is what we do not want. We want to increase the production capacity of the country, right? So essentially here they're saying that labor is just like needing skilled workers, right? Needing skilled people with the necessary skills, training, education, and good health in order to stimulate the production, right? And then capital as one of the supply factors. So with the capital here, they're saying that the quantity and quality of a country's capital is another important driver of economic growth. Cap Quality of capital is improved by applying new technology to capital equipment. So capital, obviously, it is used in the production process to produce goods and services, right? Those are your equipment, your machinery, and so on. So we need to have not just like any capital goods, but we need to have quality capital, right? And you can improve the quality of your capital by um including new technology to your capital equipment. For instance, like you can have a machine, right, that can produce maybe like 100 quantities of whatever you're producing per day, right? But with an improvement of technology, you can actually get a machine that can actually produce that same quantity, but now per hour, right? So it is capital goods are very important to stimulate production as well. But now, not just any capital goods, but we need quality capital goods, right? It's not just about the quantity, but it's just about what? Quality capital equipment, right? The ones which can be able to stimulate the production to say, okay, I'm using this machine, this one can make 30 quantities per day. And then now you try to like find and we try to find new equipment that will enable us to increase our production capacity. Um, and then now maybe you are able to produce 30 quantities per hour, right? So we have also to invest in capital goods in order to do what? To increase our production, right? Which is essentially what economic growth, which leads to economic growth. An improvement in the production, it leads to economic growth. Hope you guys are getting this one. And then entrepreneurs, those are like the drivers of production, right? Because they're saying that entrepreneurs are the driving force behind economic growth, right? Behind the production. Because like entrepreneurs, these are people that come up with ideas, right? Remember I said with the demand factors, I said Wuti, for demand to occur, for the production to occur, there has to be a demand for that particular product, right? You cannot just like um produce something that is not in demand, right? There has to be a demand for that product, right? And then after demand, then production can take place, right? So entrepreneurs are those people that they identify the people that see an opportunity to say, okay, people are demanding this particular item, let us produce it, right? And then they produce it there, and then it can then meet the demand which is out there, right? So entrepreneurs are the people that come up with the ideas, they identify opportunities and then exploit them by combining the factors of production. Right? So they combine the factors of production, obviously, because an entrepreneur is a person that will start a business, right? So they'll combine their capital, they combine the labor, the people that are going to do the work, they'll combine the land, obviously, to find the land where they're gonna situate their business at and all of that. So one of the supply factors for the sources of growth is what's entrepreneurship. We need to have entrepreneurs, people that are able to identify gaps, right? To identify gaps and then start these businesses, which then obviously increases the production capacity, which then leads to what? To economic growth, right? Yeah, I hope you guys got that one as well. So So we're done with the sources of demand and sources of, um, sorry, with the demand factors as well as the supply factors, right? With the demand factors, we have domestic demand, where we said we're focusing on the demand only that is local demand or domestic demand, so meaning that demand that is within South Africa, in the boundaries of the country, which is why for the elements of total spending, we exclude investment and imports because that is demand which occurs with the rest of the world, right? So domestic demand, it helps to also increase the production. And then we also look at import substitution where we said we want to produce goods that were imported locally, want to produce them in South Africa so that people don't spend in other countries, right? Want them to spend within South Africa, right? Obviously, now if we're increasing the production of these goods, it's obviously going to increase what? Aggregate production, right? Which is total production, um which is production in the country, right? And then we also have exports where now we say, Ruti, let us produce the goods that are exported, right? Let us focus more on producing those goods which are being exported to other countries, right? In order to do what? To increase the production. Then also look at the supply factors. We had natural resources. We said the supply factors, they are they relate to the factors of production. So where we have your natural resources, where we said, let's use our natural resources effectively and efficiently, and labor. Labor, we are more focused on the quality of labor, which is influenced by education, training, nutrition, and health, right? We need people who are fit, man, people who are healthy, because obviously when they're healthy, they can work, which will then increase what's the production, right? And automatically lead to economic growth. We look at capital, where we said, Uguti, we need capital goods, capital equipment like machinery, proper machinery that can stimulate our production, right? We have to ensure that we get quality equipment, not just any equipment, but quality equipment that can help to stimulate our production. Also look at entrepreneurship that we said those are the driving force behind economic growth because they are the ones that identify or that they're the ones who will start these businesses, right? They identify opportunities and they combine the factors of production. Right. And then we move on, we look at what is a business cycle. So we're done with economic growth. So what is a business cycle? So a business cycle is basically this. It's just a trend. It's just showing a trend basically to how is the economy been performing. It can be just for 1 year, meaning that it can be just for 2020. Then we look at the at how the economy was doing in 2020 alone, or look at from 2022, I mean 2022 and 2023, the fourth quarter of 2023, right? So it just shows the trend. So basically is that with the business cycle, they look at what has been happening maybe from 2022, the first quarter, to 2023, the fourth quarter. And then combining all of this together like that, ish, like this, we get a what? We get this thing which is then called a business cycle, right? Which just basically shows the fluctuations of economic activities for that particular period that we are referring to, right? So you can see here they're saying that business cycle is a pattern of upswing and downswing in economic activities over time. So it's just an upswing and a downswing of economic activities over time, right? And then a complete business cycle has four elements. So it has four elements. You can see here, it has four elements. You have a trough, which is basically the lowest point of the business cycle. We also have an expansion. This is where the economic activities they increase. Then we have a peak here. This is the highest point of the business cycle. Then we have a contraction where economic activities they start to do what to decrease. So business cycle has four elements, which is a contraction, a peak, an expansion, and a trough. Right. So now during the trough, this is the lowest point of the business cycle. Here we have a negative growth rate, right? You can see with the one which has figures that here we have what? A negative growth rate. Even here, negative growth rate, right? This is our trough, which is the lowest point of the what? Of the business cycle. During the trough, it's basically where our economic activities are declining. So during the trough, we'd have a high rate of unemployment, would have low income. People don't have income, obviously, because they are unemployed. Um, Remember, I made an example with the COVID-19 during 2020, where I said, I think here that we had a negative growth rate. You can see we had negative 6.2 during 2020. So this was the trough. If you were to draw this, you'd have something like this. Hey, I don't know what is happening, but you have something like this. So you can see that here, this is the lowest point during this period from 2019 to 2024. And here we experienced what's a negative growth rate because the economic activities were declining during 2020. People were retrenched, obviously because the companies could not pay them. The demand was not as much. And then obviously, sorry, I wanna go. What is happening? So with the trap, I said with people unemployed, obviously when they're unemployed, there's no income, meaning that now they have less income, obviously. So consumption expenditure also decreases. The demand for goods and services is decreases. Obviously, when the demand decreases, there is no VAT. People are unemployed, there's no tax. So even the government suffers as well because the government does not, the government revenue decreases as well, right? And obviously, when the government does not have like income, they cannot provide us with the public goods and services, right? So government expenditure also was affected and so on. So they're saying here this is a stage at which GDP, which is basically the which is what the total value of final goods and services that have been produced within the borders of the country, right? So the goods which have been produced at this stage, the total value of final goods and services which are produced within SA and other economic indicators are at their lowest, right? So the production is decreasing and other economic indicators, they're at their lowest. So we have low unemployment and I mean high unemployment. So yes, low employment, high unemployment rate. So during this phase, the economy gets stuck at a negative growth rate. Right. Additionally, the demand for goods and services is reduced, obviously, because people are retrenched from work, they don't have money. So obviously the demand is going to decrease. Right. So during this stage. So here we have a negative growth rate and the economic activities are what are declining, right? And then we have a what an expansion where now the economic activities they start to do what to increase until the peak. So here we experience things such as like employment rates start to increase, meaning that the unemployment rates start to decrease. Um, People get jobs. Obviously, now when they are employed, they have income, so the demand starts to increase, the demand for goods and services, consumption expenditure increase, and production increase because the demand is high. Obviously, now if there's an increase in the production, what does that mean, guys? There's economic growth, right? Because I said economic growth is an increase in the production capacity of a country. So if there's an increase in the production because demand is increasing, it's going to increase economic growth. Obviously, now economic growth improves, government expenditure increases because now people are employed, they can pay tax, they can pay VAT on their product that they purchase, and the government revenue increase, then the government can provide us with the public goods and services, then our standard of living improve, then we reach a peak, right? So let's just read what they say here. During the expansion is where a nation's GDP shows an upward move or recovers with this time. This period of growth is remarked as economic expansion. During this phase, the various economic indicators like consumer spending, income, demand, supply, employment, output, and business return shoot up, right? So we have consumer spending, obviously, because people have money, income increases, the demand for goods increases, obviously, as I mentioned, employment, because of what? Of employment, and the supply increase. If supply increase, output increases, meaning that the production is also increasing, which essentially leads to what? Economic growth. And also business returns increase, meaning that their profit, right? And so on. So during the expansion, the economic activities, they start what? To shoot up, right? Then we have a peak. A peak now, that is where now the economic activities, they are constant, right? Because this is the highest point of the business cycle, or this is where we experience high growth rate, right? Our production is at its highest, we have employment and all of that, but like everything here is constant, right? The factors of production are employed. So they're saying that during this expansion phase, GDP spiked to its highest level, right? This is considered the economy's peak. At this point, economic factors like income, consumer spending, and employment level remain constant, right? And then you also have a contraction. Obviously, now during the contraction, then the economic activities, they start to decline again. So we start to experience low levels of employment, low income, things start to decline again. So next comes the phase of economic slowdown. So it's just an economic slowdown. It occurs when the stagnant peak GDP starts tumbling down towards the trough. With this, the nation's production, employment level, demand, supply, income levels, and other economic parameters plummet, like they start to fall. Economic parameters fall, right? So now the production is decreasing, employment is decreasing, demand is decreasing, supply, and all of that during what's the contraction, right? So yeah, that's just it. So with the business cycle, what is a business cycle? It just basically shows the upswings. You can see the upswings and the down swings of what? Of economic activities over a period of time. Also, this line is called a growth trend or a trend line, right? And then the business cycle has four elements. The trough, which is basically indicates a negative growth rate. This is where the economic activities are declining. And then a contraction where they start to shoot. The economic activities start to shoot. And then we have a peak. Economic activities that they are constant here. And then we have a high growth rate and a contraction. They start to slow down, right? Going back to the trough and so on. And then now we have the theories of business cycles, right? So we have a Keynesian, classical, and monetary. So these are people that come up with these theories, right? When they analyze business cycles. So the Keynesians, they believe that business cycle, they occur naturally and they are caused by endogenous factors, right? So they believe that um the okay the business cycle, they are caused by what? Endogenous factors, which are factors within the market system. And so they believe that the government should intervene using the monetary and the fiscal policy, right? So they believe that the occurrence of these cycles here is basically caused by factors within the market system, and that government can intervene. So when we're in the trough, the government can intervene by maybe okay, let me just say when we're in the peak, because most people have money, nanani. So the government will try and discourage consumption and all of that. The government can increase taxes and all of that. So bring us back down to the trough or just here, right? So in basically now the Canadians, they believe that these occurrence of these cycles is caused by factors within the market system, and that government can intervene using the monetary policy and the fiscal policy, right? To to stimulate to smoothen out the downswings and the upswings of the what of the business cycle, right? Or basically to stabilize the economy. And then also have the classical. The classical, they believe that the business cycle are caused by exogenous factors, which are factors outside the market system, right? For example, such as weather conditions, bad weather conditions, and I wrote this one down. What any? Pandemics such as pandemic COVID-19. Was COVID-19 a pandemic? But so things such as COVID-19, right? Classicals believe that these occurrence of upswings and downswings, they are caused by external factors, right, outside the market system. And we do not have any control over these factors. So they believe that, for example, if we have like, okay, they made an example here to say condition affecting agricultural product. Let's say we have a bad weather which affects agricultural products. It means that the production is going to decrease, obviously, right? They say we had a flood. So it's going to affect what? The production, which is affecting economic growth essentially. So the production will decrease and will experience a high rate of unemployment because those people that work there will be without work during that period after the flood, right? So unemployment will increase. Obviously, if they're not employed, they do not have income, right? So income is also affected. And also if they do not have income, they the consumption their consumption, they cannot demand goods and services, right? So consumption expenditure also decreases, right? So the classical believe that these occurrences are just caused by outside factors, right? Exogenous factors, which we do not have control over, right? Which is why they are not saying that the government should intervene or do anything, because these are factors that we cannot control. Those are classical. And then we have monetarist. The monetarists, they believe that the occurrence of those fluctuations, upswings and downswings, they are caused by outside factors, right? And that obviously the government should not also intervene here, but they should just let the market to restore back. They should leave the market system on its own, and the market forces will restore the market back to equilibrium, right? So what they essentially saying is that these factors, obviously, they are caused by outside factors. You can say such as bad weather conditions, which are outside factors. And then they also saying that we should let the market forces to bring back the market to equilibrium. So remember we have something like this, and then we have our supply, then we have our demand, then we have our price. So essentially, we are speaking about these market forces of supply and demand, right? They're saying that now, if these factors, which are outside factors that we have no control over, such as maybe like bad weather condition, it affects maybe like the supply, right? So if we affect the quantity which is supply, which then leads to a decrease maybe in the quantity which is being demanded as well because supply has decreased. Okay, no, let me just supply. Let's say I want to make it proper. Okay, let's say it affects the agricultural production, so it's going to affect the entire supply curve. So the entire supply curve is going to decrease. I don't want to decrease the entire curve. So which essentially increase the price, right? Which essentially increase the price. You can see the price was here, it increased to here, right? It increased to here because of bad weather conditions. So what they're saying is that these cycles now, obviously, because if there's an increase in the price, it's going to affect consumption expenditure, right? You can see now that the demand is decreasing because of an increase in the price. And so what they're saying is that for when those um occurrence when the fluctuations in the business cycle like they occur, they are caused by what outside factors, and we should leave them as they are and let the market forces of demand and supply to restore back to equilibrium. So if we have something like this, then these market forces will restore back to equilibrium to here. I don't know how. Let me see. Yeah, but essentially, guys, they are referring to something like this to say that the monetarists, they believe that business cycles are caused by outside factors and that we should not and that the government should not intervene but should leave the market system on its own and let the market forces to restore um and let market forces restore the market back to equilibrium, right? And then we also have okay, so here the Keynesians, they believe that the business cycles, those up down, those upswings and downswings, they believe that are caused by endogenous factors, which are factors within the market system, and that government should intervene using the monetary policy and the fiscal policy, right? The Canadians, they believe that these business cycles are caused by outside factors, and outside factors such as weather conditions, the pandemic, the natural disasters, and so on. And then the monetarists, they also believe that these factors, the fluctuations, the upswings and downswings of business cycles, they are caused by outside factors, and that government should not intervene, but should lead the market forces to restore the market back to equilibrium. Right. Then we also have measuring business cycles. Right. So these are the indicators that reflect or predict the movement in economic activities. Right. So these indicators, they are used to do what? To predict the movement of economic activities. Right. We have the leading indicators. Economic activities, remember guys, it's those activities that I kept on mentioning. Uguti, if we have production, we're going to have economic growth, we're going to have employment, we're going to have government expenditure, and on and so on. Those are the economic activities, right? So these indicators, they predict the movement of the overall economic activities. To say, Uguti, are we going to have employment? Are we going to have unemployment? What is going to happen in the economy, right? So the leading indicators. Leading indicators, these are the most important one. So the leading indicators, they change before the economy can change, right? They predict where the economy is heading. So they're saying here, the most important indicator of the business cycle activity, which tend to peak before the peak. So they reach the peak before the peak so they will reach the peak before the business cycle even reaches the peak because they are at the leading indicators, right? So they change before the economy can change. And then also they reach the trough before the trough in aggregate economic activities. So they also reach the trough here before the economy even reaches the trough, right? Why? Because they give advance warning of the changes in aggregate economic activity and help to focus business cycle movement, right? So the leading indicators, they basically they predict where the economy is heading before the economy even gets there, right? Because they reach the peak before the peak and the trough before the trough, right? So they are the leading indicators, right? They give us more information of where the economy might be heading, right? Then we also have the coincidence indicators. These are the indicators that tend to coincide with different parts of the business cycle. So the coincidence indicators, they move together with the aggregate economic activities, right? And then we have for example, with the coincident indicators, our lecturer made an example to say that if there's an increase in the production for the firms, right? If the production is increasing, what does that mean, guys? I've been saying this, an increase in the production is what? Is essentially economic growth. So an increase in the production, it moves together with economic growth, right? So coincidence indicators, we can make an example with that to say, Guti, when there's an increase in the production, there within the business cycle, we will see what? An improvement as well in the um growth rate of the economy. Because these indicators, they tend to coincide with different parts of the business cycle. Then we have the lagging indicators. The lagging, this one, they follow after. So they move after the business cycle has changed, right? So they serve basically to confirm the behaviors of the what? Of the coincidence indicators. They're saying here, these indicators tend to learn different parts of the business cycle. So they follow after the business cycle. For example, um, my lecture also made an example to say that when to say that obviously remember the leading indicators they follow afterwards the business cycle, right? They serve to confirm the behavior of the coincidence indicators. So if here the production increased, right, which then essentially increased what? Economic growth. Then for the lagging indicators, we will see people now buying luxurious products, right? Luxury items. So for them buying those luxury items, it's just an indication to say, "Ukuthi, okay, it means that we are experiencing what? Economic growth. Because the leading indicators, they serve to confirm the behaviors of a what? Of coincidence indicators, right? Because now there was economic growth. Remember, if there's economic growth, I said Ukuthi is going to increase our exports, we're going to increase government expenditure, we're going to increase the income of the population, um, consumption expenditure, and so on. Remember, employment. So now when all of this happens just because of an increase in the production, the what will occur, what will follow after that is people buying now luxurious items, right? Is people now buying what? Expensive goods, which is then what? A lagging indicator. So if we see people buying expensive goods, we can actually confirm to say, okay, it means now we are experiencing what? Economic growth or economic development, which is basically just an improvement in the standard of living because people now can afford what? Luxurious items, right? So the leading indicators, they move before um the business cycle can change. They predict where the economy is heading, the leading indicators. The coincidence indicators, they move together with the economic activities. And then the lagging indicators, they follow after business cycles, right? They serve to confirm the behavior of what? The coincidence indicators, right? Yeah, that is just it.